Healthy, where we invite speakers to discuss timely and relevant topics on a wide range of issues, ranging from management and leadership practices to strategy to sales and marketing. So please be on the lookout on our website and on our social media channels for upcoming events. Also wanted to cover some very basic housekeeping rules. Please place yourself on mute. And don't forget, if you have any questions, please hold it to the end of the session. But if you do have any questions, you can always put them in the chat and we will try to get to as many questions as time permits. With that being said, I am very excited to introduce today's topic and speaker. So when we think of design thinking, what comes to mind? Well, it's an iterative process that has been used by major brands around the world. Think of Apple, Google, and Samsung. And it's a process where we try to think, enter the mind of the user and subsequently think of strategies and solutions. So in short, design thinking is a solution-based approach to solving problems. And it's usually applied to when it comes to designing products and services. But what about integrating design thinking into software engineering? In fact, why aren't more companies combining the two? Well, our speaker, Edgar Kiwiet, will talk about this very thing and more. Edgar is the CEO of a Netherlands-based company known as Kite, where they transform innovative business concepts and ideas into custom-made digital solutions. He started his career off as a software engineer, and after completing his MBA in international management and thinking, he pursued his ambitions to make technology more accessible and easier to use in everyday life. Before Kite, he was the CEO of one of the leading digital agencies. And over the years, he perfected his insights and views, which incorporates design thinking and software engineering in a process known as kite thinking, which I'm sure he'll touch upon. So everyone, please help me in welcoming Edgar to Technovate. Edgar, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Joya. Today, you have endless opportunities to innovate rapidly with modern techniques. You can shape new businesses online. You don't need a company to invest capital into. You can reshape and you can change supply lines and thereby take a greater share of the pie. And traditional ways of thinking, they're actually standing in the way of true digital success if you want to take it. So why should you care about digital innovation? Mark Andrews' quote has been used a lot, like software is eating the world. I like to say digital innovation will eat your business or may grow it. So digital sounds like software. It's true, software is digital, but digital innovation is not about software engineering. And in this webinar, I will share with you why innovation is not a department. Tell a bit what is design thinking actually, and why you should use it. And talk about visual engineering, which is often confused with graphical designing. Like you said, I'm CEO of a company that provides digital innovation to companies. So, and the thing is, we think business value or business impact should be the first thing you should think of. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense innovating for the sense of innovating. And kite thinking indeed integrates design thinking with traditional software engineering. So what do you think? Is it a department or is it a mindset? Well, some people, they say, let's just start a department and start executing. Let's create a playground for the programmers to work in, burn a lot of cash, and then wait, something will come out sometime. It could work. You could just start generating ideas, hire a genius. They're about, but few, expensive probably, hard to find. And the most important thing, you need both. You need to be able to ideate in a good way. You need to be able to execute, to create solutions in the right way. To give you a feeling there, what do you see there? Probably you could say it's a piece of sandstone. Well, you could also talk to an artist and says, I see a sculpture. I see somebody sitting in there. The thing is, you can have that idea, but if you're not able to shape that idea, to turn it into reality, to see how it performs, the idea is just an idea. It won't turn into anything like a solution. So first, let me take me back to your childhood. If you remember, or sitting in the sand, playing in the sand, you're just creating. You have a general concept. You could have like wanting to build a castle, but you probably don't have a blueprint. You have a general concept. And also you figure it out on the way. If I remember the feeling flying a kite, just adjusting, just trying until I got it right. And when it works, that's a good feeling. It's a process, it's a bit fragile, agile. You have to go against the wind to get it up. So that's innovation to me. And let me start with this, innovation is not about inventing. Everyone knows Apple. They never created a phone, but they made the best one by getting the best parts, creating something better, something that actually makes sense to their end users. And like I said, business impact is what should drive your innovation. So before you start, think who your company wants to be. What value do you want to add? Or what business impact do you want to deliver? Better service? Do you want to save costs? And if you got it, can you scale? Otherwise, you'll just have a good idea, prototype, and it will just sit in a corner. Also important is to have one team. Usually you have different companies, different departments who are the best in their field. But it's easy to be in agreement with your fellow professionals. If you're all marketeers, you think that's great. All software engineers, you think you're all great. But talk to the other professionals, it's no fun, but it is good. I mean, you have to get out of your comfort zone. And we say no shine without a rub. Also, don't assume. Test what you think people need. Test it with real users. Do user research. We found that a very, very practical, down-to-earth way to really see if you're building something people really need. And sometimes it doesn't work, but go on. So the whole thing is, you have to think freely like a child, but you have to act like a parent, like methodically. You need professional tools, and you need to integrate both ideation and execution in order to get to a good result. And the good thing is, you don't need to be the best. You just need to be one step ahead of the rest. And in the digital age, the first takes all, not necessarily the best takes all. So you have to fly higher first. So I think it's a mindset, not a department. So that's how we started off, and we thought, okay, we have to get a grip on this ideation. And ideation is all about shaping the right ideas into solutions. But the important part is basically not to jump to the solution. It's all about focusing on the people They have needs, they have pains. So it's what makes sense to build instead of doing it. So you hover around the needs much longer as you would like to. You need some patience there, but it's proven very valuable. It's not sector specific, this design thinking. It's all about shaping a product into the shape that serves your needs best. So it's actually started in the product design, so shaving material, stuff like that, into ergonomics. And Steve Jobs did the same for hardware and operating systems. And we think now is the time you should actually extend it further into software and digital solutions. What's also important or interesting to know is that most information is transmitted visually and much faster. So we like to say visual engineering is the algebra of ideation. And that means it's a language everyone understands globally. It's like arithmetic. If you see a picture, you can understand each other without writing, without words. Design thinking is also about co-creation and visualization. You get to a solution that nobody could solve on their own or could have done on their own from their own viewpoints. And it's all about simulating what you are trying to get at and constantly validating, adjusting it until you get it right. So design thinking is not about jumping to solutions. It is about focusing on the needs first. So what needs you have, what possibilities, constraints do you have to solve it, and then only then defining what solution would make sense. So design thinking is proving a very good way, a new paradigm of looking into designing solutions. And actually, we extended that into software engineering, or in fact, I should say, into business operations, because traditionally design thinking is about products, about single solutions, about something held by a person. And actually, a business process is, of course, much more complex, as is the innovation. And there you'll need some of the classical ways of solving digital operational solutions. So we like to say visual engineering is important. Visuals speak, visuals talk. So how can we get from the ideation, design thinking, to visuals into building the software as we are used to? Well, also there, look at industries. If you go to the creative agencies online, they're great in concepts, graphical designs. They think about the outside and they say technology will follow, they'll figure it out. Or you have the software engineers who say, oh, let's create this cool program, has all the functionality in there, and we'll figure out a graphical interface later so the user can access all the cool functionality we thought of because it's really great. Well, both approaches work, but how can you make it better? That's how we started. And actually, it is sometimes common sense, but not everyone does it. The software engineers, they should actually think about visualization of functionality, instead of writing them down in thick specs. And the creative agencies, they should design within technological constraints, because if you're really creative, you can create within a constraint, then you're really creative. And like this, the two worlds meet. And what you see, functional constraints, functions, you talk about functions in a visual way. So in comes design thinking. Design thinking is all about functional visualization. And this is what we call kite thinking, where we say, okay, let's start with the visual engineering and then think about the detailed graphics and about the concept, think about the functionality, user stories, business rules, and then come to the final solutions. So it is not about graphical design, it's engineering. It's understanding functions, technology, and users. And also a concept from design thinking, which you can apply to software engineering too. It's wireframing. You might have heard of it. A wireframe, clickable wireframe, interactive wireframe. Well, a wireframe is exactly as it says. It's something modeled from wires. You could actually get wires together and create that. You can apply the same principle to software engineering. You can nowadays, with all the tooling you have, create the feeling. You can simulate a program. You can make it appear if it's there, as if it's there. And this involves zero programming. You have great tools. We can share the ones if you're interested into it. And you can, it's pre-development. And actually you're talking to the users, the stakeholders, the customers, to actually make implicit what they mean. A dashboard means many things to many people until you visualize it. And then you make a point like, no, that's not exactly what I meant. So we are, you actually simulate the workflows and you get aligned within the customer. And in fact, we, to give you a feeling, we recorded a session with one of our bigger customers, and PostNL is the Dutch postal services. And postal, you might think, oh, boring, that's mail. Well, I can tell you, nowadays, it's not about mail, just mail. It's about delivering packages. It's about fulfillment. It is about drop shipment. It's about warehousing. It's they take a big share of the chain, and they're constantly looking for innovations and products and services that will fill that supply chain of theirs, that make use of it. So I'll show you this video. Is it on screen, Joya?
Yes, it's on screen. Yes.
All right. Is it? I would like to introduce Dux to you. Dux is working at one of our main customers, the Dutch Postal Services. And Dux is a business development manager there who engaged with us to explore the innovation they're working on. Dux, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Edgar. Yeah, we have founded in Innovation Kite and really appreciated code development partner. We came to them with a problem about our assortment. We want to combine all type of databases, gather insights in the data we have already, and didn't know how to start with creating the tooling. So we have created a wireframe. So we now show you also the wireframe we have created. This wireframe gives us a format within our thinking process, the way it will look in the future, but it also gives us the possibility to develop the tooling even more. The wireframe now shows that you have a kind of clickable demo, which really gives a good understanding of how it will look like when you start developing and start coding it. We are able to adjust all kind of things already in the file. And we also were able to think ahead together with Innovation Kite about how we can optimize our processes, but also the tooling. Creating this clickable wireframe, we have gathered new insights in optimizing processes we weren't aware of in the first place. The wireframe gives you the feeling that the tooling is already there. So we could easily validate our ideas together with our main stakeholders.
Hi, I'm Chitra. I'm Delivery Manager at Innovation Kite. What I find revolutionary is that, in fact, with this approach, the user acceptance testing is done much before the application is built. Therefore, the cost of corrections are much lower. I feel that with interactive wireframes, the process of estimation has become very easy, and the estimates are quite accurate. This way, the end delivery has minimum surprises. I feel that we are getting very closer to our goal of first-time right solution.
By also involving our external stakeholder, one of our biggest clients, we have accomplished a really fast implementation process. This way, we have been able to create value from the beginning on.
So that was our customer Postal, and basically what it helps you create with wireframing is that it structures the stakeholders or the customer thinking process. Also, they have ideas in the head, but you have to get them out. You know, they're stuck in there, but they don't even realize what their insights are all the time. So we need to help them, and design thinking techniques help a lot in that. And by actually simulating what they want, actually, and that's something we heard, is actually user acceptance testing. It's usually done at the end. And actually, they are done before you start developing. So just think of that. You are validating user acceptance before you actually do the development. And actually what you get then is people are looking forward to the solution because they already know what to expect, instead of being confronted with something they didn't really want in the beginning. So Kite thinking takes care of the digital innovation, and it's more than visual engineering alone, of course. And for who's interested in more, feel free to contact me or Joya or InterraIT on our innovation Kickstarter, where we can help you co-develop digital solutions, or attend our Kite University and learn it yourself. So Kite thinking takes digital design further. And to summarize, digital innovation might sound digital, but it's not about software engineering. It's a mindset. Design thinking accelerates your digital innovation, and that means shaping from end user needs, understanding how less is more, and take it a bit further and take it to the business process level. Visual engineering is the algebra of ideation. It connects best practices of the creative industry, software engineering industry, production industry, and it creates understanding without words. And if you do all those things right, then digital innovation will become part of your organization's mindset, which means you'll be able to fly higher than your competition, and not just once, you'll do that all the time. So thank you very much. And if there's any questions, we can go into those now.
Thank you, Edgar. I really appreciate it. It was really interesting to learn more about design thinking and how it integrates with software engineering. So we have plenty of time for questions. If anyone had a question, please unmute yourself and ask away. But actually, I can kick things off, Edgar. So you started off your career as a software engineer. So how did this idea come to you regarding integrating or combining design thinking and software engineering to come up with that kite thinking process?
That's good questions. Did it come to me at a certain moment? I think it came to me over time. I think also quite young, back when I was 25, I was working at, I was team leading, or as a lead developer, a project for the Dutch road service, and was a big project. It was about 50 man years, and the thing at the time was writing specifications. So we had binders full of written specifications that actually would cover this entire cupboard behind me. And as a developer, you had first to figure out what was written there, and then build it, and then design a screen. And all that time, just imagine that project's going to take a year of analysis and then 2 years of building. The customers was hoping that we really understood what they had asked for. So I was going already like, hey, maybe this visual representation of client needs should come before. So we experimented with that at the time already. And secondly, like you said, I was part of a digital agency, led that around the turn of the century. And that was actually where the internet world was maturing and integrating with the software world. And you had the creative designers merging with more backend applications. And that's actually where we kind of tried to figure out how you could connect those worlds. So I think those two events made me come to this thought, and we thought, okay, now let's take everything a step further, and that's how we got to Kite thinking.
Really interesting. So you had mentioned in your presentation that design thinking overall, it's not sector specific. You see it across different industries across the board. But why do you think that it's not as prevalent when it comes to software engineering? Or do you see that more increasing number of companies are adopting this approach?
Well, I believe more companies are adopting this approach. You're never the only one to invent new things. And basically, we're innovating innovation. You know, we're not the higher genius, so we're just taking it to the next level. So I think together we're all trying to create this better way based on the insights we all have together. But we do see that not all the companies do it yet. Our customers are sometimes happily surprised that we take a different approach, where they say other companies just come to us, tell us what to build, and we don't know actually, but we want to do something. So I think it can be more prevalent by itself, but I do think that a lot of people are stuck in their traditional ways, and it's always good to take one step further. Keep yourself on the edge. Right.
Sometimes it's hard to change what you're comfortable with and think outside the box.
It's all about getting out of your comfort zone.
Right. Right. You'll never know until you try. So yeah. Another question that I had is that when you combine the two, does it matter the size of the project? And if I were to say start tomorrow, design thinking, it takes, you take people from different departments. So I guess, how would you start? I mean, is it specific to a size of project, or and what kind of skills perhaps do you need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, first, size doesn't really matter that much, because the whole thing on this approach is also keeping things small. Think big, but start small. Means going for multiple releases, meaning going for multiple workflows you want to automate. You cannot do everything at once. You don't need to. So you are able to cut down a solution into important work streams and take them one by one. And you can start discovering, analyzing, validating one as you are building already in parallel the previous release. So that's all fits nicely into agile and sprint design working methodologies. If you're used to them, you don't need to. You can also just define what you have and then start building it. So it doesn't require one or the other approach to be fast. But what does matter is not so much the size as a type of project. It is most useful for data-driven solutions where people are looking for information in the way they're looking for it. If you have a predefined industrial process, well, it doesn't make much sense shaping it because it's defined. You know, so for data-driven environments, it's really good.
Right.
You asked me like what you need to get yourself started off. Well, like we said, you need both. You need ideation and you need execution. So having software development people or software architect in your team is a good start because you'll need that in the end. But you would need to mix it, add it with somebody specialized in marketing, in target group analysis, in even advertising. So all about thinking about how can we discover people's needs and offer that to them and see we can satisfy their needs. You will need somebody that is familiar with user-centric or user experience design. There's a lot of people being educated in that area. They are around. You would need a business engineer who understands if a solution makes business sense at all, and the architects to see it, to validate it. So you need the 4 professional fields, and you need to put them into one single team, not in separate departments. They need to interact. You know, they're like communicating vessels. If one has a different opinion or changes his point, the other one should adjust accordingly. So it's always the 4 professional viewpoints you need and able to create a solution that makes sense.
Right. Right. So these departments, I mean, you're saying they're operating in one, cannot have that silo mentality
No.
to integrate.
No, you need a multidisciplinary team, and
Right.
multidisciplinary doesn't mean I need a Java developer and a PHP developer. It means having these 4 different types of professional insights. There are different ways of looking at a solution.
Right, right. That makes sense. We actually have a question from the audience brought in from Pinaki. So Pinaki, thank you for the question. He said, fantastic presentation, Edgar. So if you look at the design thinking steps in general, it talks about empathy, followed by defining, ideation, prototype, and testing. So he wanted to know if empathy is basically the same thing as user needs.
Yes, it is basically touching the same area. It's empathize with your user. So that is really all design thinking. The only thing there where you should actually take it a bit further is you should also have empathy with the developer. And if you only have empathy with the users, you could create a great solution that's maybe too costly or too impossible or impractical to build. So we say you need to have empathy with the user, but also have empathy with the developer. And if you make that connection right, then you'll get very cost-effective and good solutions.
That's really interesting. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding design thinking, the process? Don't be shy.
Well, people are shy, I think.
People are a little.
Hi, Edgar. This is Jagannath.
Hi,
I have a question on design thinking. So we heard about user experience a lot in these days, and it becomes more powerful thought process in terms of software designing. So how it is different from designing thinking? Is this the same thing, or is it a different concept altogether?
No, it's also well, they came from different directions. And actually, there's also, I think user experience designers, they have been educated in parts of design thinking. In my years as a software developer, I never came close to things like that. But now in the IT and educations, people talk much more about customer journeys. So how does a customer walk into your system, in your solution, try to find its way, and how can you make that intuitively? And this intuition is all about user experience design. It's also all about providing less, so you have more impact. So less is more. So there is a lot of aspects of design thinking in there, but it's also about intuition, ergonomics in there. So it's a mix of multiple ways of thinking, but it's all taking a user-centric approach. So thinking from the user, how will this person look for information, instead of how can I tell them how to find it? Because in the old days, you could just provide a manual. You know, you had a fixed set of users, give them a training, and they find their way. And now people are used to finding their way. I mean, when is the last time you used a manual to use an application? So that's maybe the summary of user experience design. How can you provide something that doesn't need a manual? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have a question?
Well, if there's any other question, feel free to mail me personally. I mean, sometimes it's easier to ask a question directly, so feel free to mail me. My mail is on the screen, edgar.kiwiet@innovationkite.com.
Actually, we do have a question come in.
Okay.
This is, I think it's from Shweta. She mentioned, so she's said, pretty interesting session. He talked about UAT even before building. Is it a tool as part of the prototype/test process of design thinking, or is it a dynamic wireframing?
No, it is. Well, it's a combination. Actually, the wireframe is a dynamic thing. It's interactive, which you could actually use, literally keep it up in the air to see how it should work. So it is an interactive way of showing functionality. It is also a summarized way to capture user stories, business rules. So it is a very concise way of writing a general test script, in fact. And you could, in fact, extend it with testing. Like that, this interactive wireframe, the beauty of it is you can use it for multiple things. After the idea has been created together with the customer, one track can already start on the testing without needing big functional specs. You could actually, we had that in some cases where the customer says, okay, we think we got it, but we want to test with real end users. So we paused the project there, and they went really into the field and tested it with their end users, which were specific medical users. And they came back to us in 3 weeks and said, 3 months, and they said, okay, we tested it using your wireframe, and now we want this change before we start building it, because they need this and they need that less. So user testing goes two ways. It's actually validating your digital application, but it's also about the functional stuff. Is this really what you want?
All right. So actually, we have a couple of questions coming in now. Another question is, thank you, Pranita, for this. How does design thinking coexist with innovation paradigms working directly with lead users?
I'll have to interpret that a bit. With lead users, I'm not exactly sure if I understand the question. Can you try to rephrase it?
Pranita, did you want to just clarify on your question, if you're there? not.
Otherwise, we'll pick it up in a bit when maybe we get another clarification.
Sure. I'll actually, I'll move to the next question. Oh, I guess she's muted. Let me see if we can unmute her. We'll get back to her question. What are some best practices to develop a better UX for clients?
Best practices. That's a very good question, because the best practices keep changing, funny enough. But people keep coming up with new solutions, and basically the whole purpose is, how can I get to my information with least clicks possible? You know, you would like to access your information just with one click, and people come up with innovative ways all the time to improve this. So what has been best practices a year ago can already be old-fashioned for applications right now. So it's a field continuously evolving. You should also continuously be looking around how other people are doing stuff. And also there, innovation is not inventing. Don't try to figure out something yourself. Somebody probably got 80% to what you need already. So use that and go further on that. It's a bit like music. A new style just doesn't appear just like that. It evolves from the previous trends.
Right. I hope that answers your question, Aditya, for that. And another question, how can this system, I guess, combining design thinking and software engineering, boost a business such as a startup that has, I guess, very minimal public relations? He's asking, say, how do you reach from point 1 to the end, point 10?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had some startups during our days, and you have two types of startups. You have startups that have a great idea but don't have any capital, and you have startups with funding in place. Well, the last one's easy because there's an idea that seems to be validated by some investors, and they can add resources like nothing to them. They just want to have this in the air and see if it works. If you have a startup with little capital to start with, basically, a lot of companies say, okay, let's give me a programmer. But like we say, they're not cheap necessarily. And actually, you start building and you have to adjust. And the best thing is stay to this clickable wireframe. It's a very low investment. Tools are open source, freeware, so you don't need to invest into any software. You just need to gather a group of people to create this solution. And that is something, I think this is a bit too lengthy to explain here, but then you have lots of types of workshops. How do you gather insights? How do you define needs, and how do you go to solution? You know, it's like a staged way of getting from the beginning to the definition of a solution. But the thing is, you need a good process, but you don't need much capital or investment. You need the right people around you. So get somebody in each of those fields: marketing, business, IT, and user experience, and then you can start fly. You know, Kite's also something very light and thin. That's the first thing you need to get in the air. And as soon as you have your first release or even your first demo, you could actually go looking for capital investors. Say, hey, this is the idea. This is what it looks like. Because a barrier often to get investments is they say, okay, what actually are you building then? First build it, then come back. Then I'll see if I want to invest into it. So you solve that part of the dilemma.
Hi, Edgar. Yeah, so to reframe my question is, when we're talking about co-creation that happens, we are often dealing with, a lot of customers who involve themselves into co-creating, various technologies. So how does design thinking help those paradigm innovations that are happening today?
Well, I think The whole point of design thinking is that you also there don't jump to the solution. And if you have people who are great at certain aspects, doesn't matter if they're engineering in any type of field in building stuff, people like to jump to solutions. And the whole power is basically, somebody told me last week, is stay off the solution. First, dive a bit more into the real user needs or your stakeholder needs. And I think the power is there for every industry. And not to jump to the execution, but take a step further forward than ideation. So I think that will help in any situation. It's a mentality.
Thank you for answering my question, Edgar.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pranita. I think I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time. So I'll see if I can get to these two questions. Thank you, Pragya, for this question. So she loved the session. So her question was, is it important to carry out the different stages of design thinking sequentially, or can it be done in a non-linear fashion? Also, which stage do you think is the most important stage of design thinking? And is there any specific stage that you would put more emphasis on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good question. There is a linearity to it. I mean, you have to go from insights to definitions to solutions. However, you'll need to reiterate. It doesn't go in one go. So you cannot plan, say, okay, now it's done. You actually can refine your previous step as much as you like. So they're like a few discrete steps, but you should revisit them at least once. And depending on the complexity and the needs, revisit twice or 3 times. And that you should reconsider that for each step, but you should do them sequentially, but revisit them until you think you're good enough. And the other part, what you think is most important, all steps are important, but the part that's also for me personally is always difficult. I also want to go for solutions, you know, that's what you want. It's good, you know, or you actually think, I know what they want. Wait, I'll get it done, and then we'll check. But the whole thing is to actually stand still and wait until you really gathered all the insights with what is the insight, what would bring you further, and what's your real need, and is there a different one? You need some patience for that. And I think that's the hard part. That's also the child parent part. Let's just do it. No, let's first think. I think you should have that patience to just explore the needs further. So insight gathering, I think, is the most underestimated part, which you just get, yeah, insights. No, take your time there. That's where you get the most value. You find the most value. It's like prospecting.
Right. So I'll just have one more question for you, and then so this is from Sudipto. Great talk, Edgar, very easy to understand. However, my question is, we keep hearing about design thinking more with software engineering, mobile development, etc. Do you have any appropriate example of design thinking, say for a traditional engineering, example like civil engineering?
Civil engineering, meaning building bridges, or civil engineering consumer products application?
Say building one very nicely, completely new design buildings. So,
new design buildings.
Yes.
I think you could use that too, because also there, in fact, I think the buildings, they are ahead. They are already doing it. You know, you can simulate 3D models of a house and zoom in and out. So I think they are already doing. They're already applying it actually before the software people are doing it. Really, You know, you have 3D simulations. You can make it look through. You can have a virtual walkthrough. So I think the civil engineering is actually ahead of software engineering.
Thank you, Edgar. Because in nowadays, like if you go to some modern city, you can see the buildings are of different kind of shape. It is not on traditional rectangular buildings. Some buildings are more like musical instruments. Some buildings are all kind of different. Either it's look like a space stations and stuff like that.
True. Yeah, the artist part is also a big part of that. So it's so I think, but it's been like that a lot too in the software engineering. The civil engineering is being used a lot to shape software engineering ways of thinking. So it doesn't map one-to-one, but definitely I think that's also where they started with software engineering. You know, engineers started building buildings. Now they're building software.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Edgar. I can't thank you enough for this wonderful talk. I definitely learned a lot. And for anyone that wants to continue the conversation with Edgar, or if you have any further questions, so this is, I would say this is the best email address for you, right? On the slide. And or you can connect with him on LinkedIn as well. But thank you, Edgar. Great session. And thank you everyone for attending.